And welcome back to part 4, I believe. Yes, part 4, or part 3, depending on which video you picked up on. I did do a preamble video. So if you watched the last video, which we basically talked about 1994 and how anime manga was digested in my geographical location, 1994. So we're rolling into 95 now. Now, to sort of set things up, 1994, or even obviously long before 94, as I'm sure some people will call me out, the internet did exist, but it didn't exist as it was about to in 1995. So I had internet in 94. It was problematic. So I had to actually buy my bandwidth from my local university. Actually, I brought it through a broker who worked for the local university. I paid by megabytes. I think it used to be $1 a megabyte to buy it, and you had to buy it in 5 megabyte blocks. It meant, because I lived in a rural area, and obviously nearest university was right in the heart of the city, so I had to dial an out of area phone number every time I wanted to use it, which limited when I could do it because phone bills are very expensive here in Australia back in the 90s. So it was generally Sunday morning you get 5 minutes for $5. So I'd ring on a Sunday morning, and again, 5 megabytes doesn't go very far, so I'd be on there for a few minutes, and there wasn't a lot to find. I mean, everything was, again, sort of very much text based. So if you were finding anything, it was going to be scanned images of photos that had come out of magazines, or maybe if someone was doing a fan sub, they might have scanned a couple of cells off and they've made it available through a website. And because there was no www dot, it was, you had to know what you're looking for. So it was like a HTTP, colon, backslash, and then a whole sequence of numbers with decimal points. So that was 94. So obviously 1995 things start to change. So obviously how we digest manga and anime in a local sense doesn't change. It's still the local comic book shops. It's still the local CD store or the record store, or the Chinese news agent up the road sort of thing. When I say they're not up the road from me, I lived in the country, so it's up the road in the city. But the internet, it sort of burgeons now. This is where we have the first of the www dot era. So you can now use things like Alta Vista or Mega Search to actually start searching for things. And like pornography, unfortunately, anime is one of the very early things to blow up online. And this is where the problems where, Hayao Miyazaki recently wrote an article or sort of did a piece on how the golden age of anime is long past. Well, this is what leads to that sort of inventive period of anime and manga going the way of the dodo. Because in 95, basically, as the internet sort of takes off in the www dot or the World Wide Web era starts off, some of the first things you see, just hold on. Some of the first things you see is the arrival of scanlations. So people are actually taking either American publications, so stuff that's been done by Viz or Image or Dark Horse, and just scanning it onto a website, up and putting it on a website, or they've done what they call fan translation. So they've taken a manga from Japan, and then they've started scanning it over. They've then edited out the original dialogue and then put in American, Western English, basically. This is a problem because obviously it circumvents the purchasing side, because if you don't have to buy it, if you can just find it online for free, then you're not going to go and spend the cover charge of a manga or a comic book at the time. So you imagine, I think mangas back then sold for about $15 to $20. We'll talk about the graphic novel type, obviously, your normal monthly publications. I think about that time they were about $350 US. So, and I mean, that money, it's all under license. So, Viz Media wasn't just hoovering that whole $350 up. Obviously, the comic book store got a bit, publishers get a bit, but then so did Kodansha or Kodokawa or whoever in Japan, who was a primary license holder, got money too. So people all of a sudden not buying the manga or so forth, because we'll come into this in a moment, not buying the manga through the comic book store because they can now find it online for free. It's starting to basically chew into a profit point that a lot of businesses require. And I'm not saying piracy is a bad thing, because obviously sometimes it's the only way to get something. I'm just saying that, there is a causation effect, that if you pirate something, then, someone's missing out who, created it. Now, obviously, anime was a little bit better protected this time, because anime, basically, if you imagine, I think back then we were still using MPEG and MPEG-2, as well as QuickTime and real-time. QuickTime was very information hungry. So, a 30-second video could be quite a large file size. Real time was a bit different. It actually allowed for very good file compression as far as videos go, but you lost quality. And then obviously MPEG and MPEG-2, very nice. But it was basically at that point, for music, it was about 1 megabyte a minute. I think videos went to about 5 megabytes a minute. So they're big files, and internet was very slow. So, I mean, I had a 28.8K modem. So, downloading, say, like you would today, an episode of Japanese anime, which runs out around, in the lowest compression, about 250 megabytes, would have taken about 3 days, thereabouts. And again, a lot of the early internet service providers, they didn't cap your download limits, and they didn't cap your usage time. What they did is they had a first in, first out system. So basically, if too many people were trying to get on, if you'd been on the longest, they're going to boot you, and you would have to then try and dial back in later. So, and there was, but not a lot of people knew about file pickup systems. So there was like Vampire, and there was a couple other ones where if your download got broken halfway through, it would actually sort of truncate the file, hold the file space open, and then when you got back up online again, it would then actually restructure the file and allow you to download the rest of the file, as opposed to just losing your file altogether if the internet chopped out. And obviously speeds were obviously a big problem. I certainly remember in 95, I'd get up at like 3 o'clock on a Sunday morning to use the internet, because that was when I was going to get the best speed, because there was no one else on in the world, I'm assuming, at that time. So manga was starting to take a punch. Now, I mean, not for me, I kept reading manga, but certainly you could see the writing was on the wall. Now, the things that obviously this did allow with the burgeoning of the internet was some pretty cool stuff. So obviously Windows 95 came out the same year, and the first thing we saw was Windows themes. And there is actually still a couple of websites around today that still host theme files that were compatible with 95 and 98 and ME and that. And so we could animate our computers, so we could have our computer follow our fandom. And it was everything. It was a wallpaper, it was mouse clickers, it was all your sound effects, so your click sound, your incoming email, outgoing email, startup, shutdown, opening and closing applications. They all had their own tunes. I certainly know I had at one stage Evangelion, and I know at one stage I think I had Oh My Goddess and a few others. The other thing, obviously, that the internet did facilitate very early on was the ability to get hold of games from Japan that hadn't been made available in the West. So, because some games did make it over here for PC. I mean, obviously, console's a different sort of scenario, but a lot of PC games just never got over here. So again, it was, legally acquired. And there was mainly dating games and that, but because, 20, of course I'm going to play these sort of games, a little bit of hentai, yeah, it's all good. So the internet did sort of start to allow a lot more to occur. Now, I was talking before about real time. Now, one of the interesting things, and I can't remember if it was 95 or 96, there was a website turned up called W.TV, and they were actually playing streaming anime, and they were using highly compressed 320 by 280 real-time videos. So you could actually stream anime in 1990. As I said, it was either 95 or 96, but you could stream anime. And downloading anime was possible, but there was no real websites for it. You had to actually use either Newsreader or IRC, and generally it was done on trade-offs. So you would have to give the person who owned the file transfer protocol site equivalency. So if you wanted to download, say, one episode of anime, you would have to give them an episode they didn't already have back, which made it very hard because obviously if you didn't have any, you couldn't do it. Big things probably for younger people to sort of appreciate at this time. There's no torrent. There's no LimeWire. There was no Napster. So everything's still very much underground, and you had to sort of know the right search values or know the right people to get the right website addresses to actually find what you were looking for. And to a certain extent, it didn't matter because now anime was getting bigger. In 1995, anime was starting to really take off. Australia actually had its own anime, two actually, anime licenses. That was, of course, Manga Video, which would become Madman Video, and Kaseki, who unfortunately sort of fettered out. So it meant getting hold of anime now in Australia was very easy. It was actually available at most video stores. And of course, I was still getting a lot of stuff from America because at the time, Manga Video was focusing on OVAs and movies. Kaseki was focusing on OVAs and movies. So no one at that point was really touching on TV shows, where, of course, obviously ATV was doing TV shows, Viz Media was doing TV shows. So there was still a very big need to visit the local comic book shop to get hold of the previous catalogue and everything else. So that's 1995. Thank you very much for watching. In the next video, we'll move on to probably the late 90s. Thanks for watching, and remember to like and subscribe, leave comments, leave questions, and we'll see you next time.